Technology today is the epicenter of every facet of our lives. IT drives everything, from our meager daily activities to our personal and business endeavors. The education industry today has caught up with the dynamic tech-savvy world and has undergone a colossal change from traditional rote learning to innovative tech-driven methods. The process of imparting education is not restricted to a lecture in a classroom anymore, but has evolved to become a hub of learners and educators all present on one platform to learn and grow. I welcome you all to this panel discussion where our esteemed panelists will talk about this rapid change in the education industry and how online education is imparting the young minds. Today, we have with us Mr. Ranveer Alabadia, YouTuber and co-founder Monk Entertainment. Better known as Beer Biceps in the digital space, his journey started way back in December 2014 when he took to YouTube to document his own journey of fitness and weight loss. What started as a personal chronicle soon struck a chord with millions of people watching him online and became what is now one of the most popular YouTube fitness channels in the country. Welcome Ranveer, thank you for being here.
Great being here.
Next we have with us is Mr. Arun Jagannathan. Founder Crack Verbal and English for India. An entrepreneur and a career coach, Arun has taken up the task of providing online soft skills training through his organization English for India to corporate individuals. He is also helping students to achieve their dreams of studying abroad using his company Crack Verbal, which helps them crack competitive exams like GRE and GMAT. Thank you, Arun, for being here.
Thanks.
Next we have is Mr. Praveen Tyagi, founder StepApp and PACE IIT and Medical. An individual who has spent 2 decades in the education industry and has enabled lakhs of students to achieve their dreams of getting into the premier engineering and medical colleges in the country. Praveen now has brought his experience to the digital world with his platform StepApp via gamified learning. Thank you, Praveen, for being here. Next, we have with us Mr. Zishan Hayat, founder and CEO of Topper. He has been a consultant to Fortune 100 companies, an angel investor, and the founder of India's leading education portal for students of class 5 to 12, which is redefining schooling in India. Mr. Zishan Hayat, thank you so much for being here.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Next we have with us is Mr. Ashutosh Kumar, founder and CEO Testbook.com. An IITian himself, Ashutosh had a knack of creating successful startups since his early days. His latest venture, Testbook, helps students crack some of the toughest government exams in the country. One of a kind online education platform, Testbook is trying to reach out to students in every part of the country who have an ambition of achieving high-level government jobs. Thank you, Ashutosh, for being here.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
To start off the conversation, my first question is open to everyone. In the last decade, we have seen a rapid expansion of the online education market, which ranges from mainstream to vocational education. What do you think are the factors that have led to such a rapid growth in this sector?
India is a very vast, diversified country. Students from villages to smaller towns to bigger towns, and we don't have a supply for good teachers. Now, thing is like how are we gonna have the supply and demand fix it? And this is where the EdTech comes very handy into it. You can have a very good quality standardized content that can be sort of accessible to students through internet and devices. And as he said, internet has gone deeper into India. Smartphone has become very cheaper. So I guess this is something which has boosted really well this in last couple of years, the EdTech thing.
The first thing is, how do people how are they actually learning today? If you ask me, it's on WhatsApp. Sure. A lot of content is being consumed. And what happens is an app becomes an extension. If I can learn from WhatsApp, I can learn from another app. So I think the comfort with the media is also there.
Okay.
And also when you have, a large player like Byju's coming with, let's say, celebrities, I think there is a social proof acceptability that you can learn online.
Sure.
I think that's one other thing that has happened in the last few years.
We have a huge population which needs to be trained and who need to learn. We do not have too many great teachers, good teachers, people who have knowledge. So we have to create solutions for them, and technology, the infrastructure is in place now. And we are like the content players who are coming with solutions. Some solutions may be video lectures, some solutions can be gamified approach like StepApp or influencers or WhatsApp, whatever platform it can be. But I feel that personalized learning in an interesting way delivered to the child is the essence.
So I think the primary reason is in the last 10 years, computing became super cheap. 20 years ago, somebody who owned a PC was a super rich person. Any family who could afford to buy a personal computer was a super rich person. Today, everyone carries a 10 times more powerful computer in their pocket.
Sure.
So computing became cheap. Android phones crashed to sub 10,000 rupees, which was probably unimaginable 10 years ago. That was number one. Number two, exams, etc., got mandated to go online, right? Because it was super difficult to conduct massive exams across centers. So as soon as exams were mandated to go online, and the exams patterns also changed to become objective type, or at least majority of them were objective type. That was a big enabler around education becoming digital. The third thing was device penetration, device literacy, etc., became super high. The final thing that really unleashed this was bandwidth becoming cheaper. So India became a country where the bandwidth was cheapest, the Jio being the latest entrant to it. But I would say the Jio factor was like the last straw that essentially unleashed the dam. But there was like already 10 years of work towards this thing coming.
My next question is to you, Ranveer. Fitness has always been a classroom training methodology. How did you manage to break the clutter, break the traditional mindset, and bring your followers online to learn about fitness from you?
Over time, we've transitioned from fitness into teaching a lot of other things, but the principles have stayed the same. And I feel it's a three-pronged principle. The first is that the person who's teaching should have a lot of clarity about the subject, know the subject well, but also have clarity to be able to make the subject very simple. You should be able to teach rocket science to a 3-year-old. Then you'll be able to be a good teacher. That's one aspect of it. The second is you should be a good communicator and bring in a little bit of humor, I feel. And this is the case for all the best teachers as well. They bring in that little bit of flair in teaching. And the third is with video content, so you're basically simulating eyesight for someone. So if I want to teach you how to lift a dumbbell properly, I'll show you that dekho aise karte. You lift it when your elbows are locked. I can do the same thing by making a camera held there, directing the video really well and simulating an actual in-person learning experience. So video content is definitely the future to teach a lot of the just general life skills. I feel like 99% life skills can be taught through great video content and good communication.
Actually, picking up from that, Praveen, your app talks about gamified learning and not much about video-driven learning. What is the basic difference and why did you choose this path of gamified learning?
So I'm not against video learning. What I'm trying to say is that in videos, if you just have a teacher who's trying to teach you something, I feel that's a very passive way of learning. So a participative or more interactive ways, if the child is in a gamified format where he is trying to learn as well as while he is learning, there is a lot of data which is being generated.
Sure.
And that data is going to be the basis of a lot of inputs that the child can be given back, whether it is the performance report being sent to the parents with all the details where the subtopic in which the child is weak, or it is lying with the policymakers on their dashboard who have to make the right policies.
My next question to you, Praveen, is that you have been in the brick and mortar industry for 20 years now. Has the experience helped you to actually have a smoother ride while you started your own edtech firm?
While teaching as a teacher, I realized that I was teaching all rich kids like you, charging them hefty amount of fees and sending them to IITs and becoming a celebrity teacher. So after 10-12 years, I started realizing that I am increasing the gap instead of bridging the gap. So the wish list was very long. So it was like best quality education. In fact, I have a Jio connection, but which is not known to people. So I had a meeting with Mr. Manoj Modi and Kiran Thomas long back, 12 years back. And in that, Mr. Manoj Modi shared this thought and which got etched in my mind, which was like best quality education to the remotest child at the most affordable price. I added two more things, in a fun way and make it rewarding. So that is what, I have been trying to do through StepApp.
Sure.
And let's see.
Zishan and Ashutosh, coming to your organizations, you both do not come from a very extensive classroom teaching experience. How was it for you to start up a venture which forayed into educational technology, and what did it take for you to learn about the nuances of teaching and classrooms?
The whole idea was to sort of standardize the content, good quality content, figure out how you can break the learning into smaller parts, because every student is different. If you have someone born and brought up in Mumbai versus someone born and brought up in Kanpur, is very different. The background is very different. So that's where we need to figure out, and I guess those fundamentals were clear when we started Testbook. The whole idea was about to figure out the right technology, the right experience. Target audience are from the smaller towns. And there the trouble is even much bigger than what you have students coming from Mumbai. So I remember 2015, we had to dumb down our app. So we made a very gamified learning app, and then there's no traction happening. There's no engagement. Then we realized, okay, fine, the education is fine, they need content, but you'll also have to figure it out and see their behavior perspective. Someone coming to internet just a couple of years back, and you're expecting them to sort of be very fluent with all the digital product, it's not possible. So I guess those were the learnings which came throughout the Testbook journey. Now I guess we understand the maths pretty clear, pretty way, and then is on.
Sure.
Yeah. So my background is technology. So I'm a product manager.
Yeah.
I was a product manager at my previous startup for 5 years. I'm a product manager at Topper for the last 7 years. I don't have a teaching background, but my day job is to think about using technology to change education. In an alternate life, I would be thinking about using technology to maybe change cab riding, or using technology to changing food delivery. I don't have to be a restaurateur to change food delivery, right? Like I need to be a technologist to change something. So I think that's my background, and I just day in, day out, I think about how can we use tech to influence your interactions, your user experience, your requirements, and then solve. Of course, we need a large pedagogy team, and we lean on many educationists to build the content for us. But like my primary job is to use technology to change things.
We see brands in the online education industry spending huge amounts of money in traditional media like TV, print, and even sponsorships, in a category where quality of product is of utmost importance in acquiring and retaining the customers. Do you all believe that such high media spends are justified?
So I think what happens is, if you look at traditionally education, institutes, they have taken a long time to create a brand equity. Sure. And education, by the nature of it, takes time, because eventually it's your students who are going to be your biggest brand ambassadors, who are going to go and talk about you, right? And many of the examples are in Kota. But what I feel is that with a lot of capital infusion, I think this cycle is tried to be, shorten the cycle. Sure. Right? But I think eventually it is a brand that will take time, and it has to come from students giving feedback and students, seeing success.
I have done education for 22 years, PACE, and it was word of mouth. Most of the students who came to me and the name and everything, it happened in 22 years. But if you have a product which is scalable, which can be available to every child across the globe tomorrow, now you cannot sit and wait for word of mouth to spread. Sure. So there you need a little bit of marketing, and I think that's a justified thing.
Ishan, anything to that?
I agree. So education is a long feedback loop category.
Sure.
The feedback loops are super long. In food delivery, you have a feedback loop within 45 minutes. In e-commerce, you have a feedback loop within 3 days.
Sure.
In education, you have a feedback loop after 1 year, tentatively, maybe not after 3. So if you want to short circuit that, there is potential to spend on the brand, but eventually it is going to be word of mouth, right? No amount of branding. It's not a shirt, right? There's no point of going to a branded institute unless there is great results from it.
Yeah, and also I feel your customers are online. So the reason I push for influencer marketing, especially in this space, is because they're already online themselves.
Sure.
So you're just sending them from one platform to another.
Fair enough.
Very easy kind of marketing for your end customer.
My next question is to you. You have ventured out into 2 different kinds of marketing.
Right.
One is called English for India, which is basically soft skills training to corporates who are not coming from the urban league of economies, while the other is for GRE, GMAT, urban youths who are looking then as an ambition to go abroad. How have you actually separated the marketing strategies, and how do you think differently for these 2 kinds of audiences?
Right. So just to give you a background, I was actually in tech.
Sure.
And I worked in tech for about 10 years. I hated it. And I was a teacher at heart. So I used to teach part-time.
Sure.
So I taught for about, the whole year,
Sure.
The whole of 10 years. And then I finally quit and I started off. So that's where I started off Crack Verbal,
Sure.
which was into GMAT and GRE. Now, what the kind of audience that comes there is a guy who's been studious throughout school, went to college, very studious, slogged off for like 4-5 years. Suddenly he's 25. He wakes up and he says, what have I achieved, what do I want to do? So they come to me, I would say, not because they want to do an MBA, but because they were trying to find some answer. Is this it, right? I mean, do I want to do something more? So for them, what happens is it becomes more of a want. So a lot of times for us, it's to motivate them and to show them the right path. But English for India, which is into the B2B, so our client is really a corporate. So, like we have done it across retail, hospitality. And over there, what I see is it's more of a need. So he understands that if I were to speak better English and if I were to have better communication, it is going to directly, result in an improvement in my income. So we see that, the motivation in both. The first, it's not about money, but it's more about, wanting. The second is it's more of a need.
Ashutosh, you have a different set of educational products altogether. You target one of the toughest markets, that's tier 2 to tier 4, where digital as an ecosystem is still being accepted. How difficult it is for you to actually foray into such a market and get people on board your platform to actually learn from it?
We feel there is a problem or you need a different approach at all the 3 levels, be it top funnel, middle funnel, or bottom funnel. So why the top funnel and how the top funnel? So they are not the people who sort of spend 4 hours, 5 hours every day on internet. If they're not on internet for 5 hours, you cannot catch them through SEO or SEM or social media. No, you have to sort of reach out somehow where they are actually. And that's how we have a very huge offline distribution and offline reach out strategy, where we partner with several cafes. Now, why several cafe? So now all the exams that sort of, all government recruitment exams, so the application process is online. And those people and those kids are not used to how to fill the online applications. So these guys actually go to cyber cafe, take their help, pay extra money to sort of fill the form on behalf of them. And that's why we go and sort of train those cyber cafe guys, because these guys are already sort of used to with the tech product. So because every time throughout the day, they sort of use some or other website on the internet. So we sort of partner with cyber cafes, we partner with bookstores, partner with a lot of local coaching institutes. So you have to figure out somehow some local channel partners to reach out to those area, to interact and reach out to those customers. That's at the top funnel. The biggest problem is at the bottom funnel. In the smaller towns, if I talk about tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, it's still a heavy cash-heavy economy. If my dad is earning in cash because of maybe some tax-saving issues, I'm not going to let my kid spend in digital money. So that's where you need to figure out some solution. So we went to a very traditional way of solution of, like, say, voucher thing. So Vodafone and Airtel used to have the recharge card voucher. So you go, pay in cash, buy it, scratch, there's a 9-digit code, and just activate it. And that's how we do. So our whole offline strategy or offline acquisition work on that recharge voucher things. So you need to figure out some different strategy or way to figure out and reach out to those customers.
Zishan, my next question to you is that for you, consumers and your customers are very different. Your consumers are students of grade 5 to 12, while your customers are their parents. How difficult it is to convince the parents that your platform is the right one for their child?
I mean, our problem is 2x because you need double the enrollment. You need the consumer's enrollment, which is a student, but you also need the parents' enrollment, which is the customer. They're actually paying from their wallet. So both enrollment-wise as well as time-wise, right? You need to be convincing them at the same time. It's important. Many times kids download the app, but parents don't know what they downloaded, so we have to tell them that this is a great app. Many times parents search for it, but kids don't want to do it because, who wants to learn? So yeah, it becomes a 2x more challenge. But as far as digital usage is concerned, I don't think that's a problem anymore. I mean, I think we come from a different generation when, devices were, like, first of all, not available. When they were available, they were expensive to use because data. And eventually, I don't think we're not the digital natives. You have to ask a kid who was born after 2000. They don't know a life where the computer doesn't have an internet. Actually, they don't know a PC. They just know laptops. They don't know large devices that don't have a touch screen. So, and parents of such digital natives have lost the device war very early. They lose it when the kid is 4 years old, right? They are not going to negotiate with the kid every single day because it takes 30 minutes to negotiate with the kid to give up your device. So they lost that battle. Now that they've lost the battle, they might as well redirect them to a better content or use like content that is meaningful. So kids are going to use the device. You might as well direct them to the right content.
Introduction stage of your category's life cycle is over. You guys are now in the growth stage. Do you think going forward, influencers will become very important to you guys as brands, and will you look at investing X amounts of monies into influencers going forward?
So let's look at India in 2010. You wanted to learn something, you called Just Dial. They give you a bunch of numbers, you called them, went to the institute, that's what you learned. 2050, you went to Google and you searched, you still went to the company. 2020, people are going to Facebook, they are listening to him, and his brand credentials is getting transferred onto the brand. They are not making the buying decision.
Sure.
So I think that ways to kind of make them, so it has to kind of go from that to being a brand, and I think that's the key of what the purchasing is in 2020. Nobody wants to buy, they want to build the trust, get to know from people they know, and then decide on that. So I think
A good influencer will always give you access to your early adopters.
Sure.
Like you'll get that first pool of audience to come and check out your product. Then it depends on how good the product is for them to stick around.
So my take on this influencer thing is that digital media is a different creature, basically. Digital media it's a different world. It's a different universe, and yes, the dynamics are there. People do have an impact on decision making of other people. But at the same time, if the combination has to be like, I am from the content side and I have been a teacher and I have started this Step App. So my confidence stems from that if the product is right, it will spread. Yes, influencers can play the role of a catalyst. That's all I have to say on this issue.
As online education is growing, what do you think is the future of it? And what are the things that brands need to be careful of while growing their organizations into those big metal organizations that we see?
The mechanics for EdTech also remain the same, right? You have to create a product that delivers value. If it has to disrupt an existing industry, you probably have to deliver 3 to 4x the value, if not 10x. Ideally at 10x, you can be sure that it is going to disrupt. At 3 to 4x value, you can pray that it disrupts. So the classic way of under-promising, over-delivering, and not the other way around. So make sure, the key metrics here would be engagement, make sure your student sticks around, frequency, that your student comes frequently, and retention, that the student uses it for a very, very long time.
we have been able to create a kind of a community of people who have gone to top business schools, but they like to take out time to actually interact. I think this kind of a gig economy will really be an opportunity where we get a lot more serious teachers who otherwise had issues with, the payment or travel or things. Same thing for English for India. We have women who take sessions from their home, right, on Zoom, and they are able to do that. So the gig economy opening up, more teachers coming into the fold, thanks to technology, is the opportunity.
We had a great discussion today. We understood some great stuff. I thank all our panelists today for gracing the panel with their presence and sharing their valuable insights on the subject of online education.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Kiska Brand Bachega gives you a chance to visit our studios and interact with India's biggest celebrity brands live by answering a simple question. Which of the following app is targeted to Tier 2 to Tier 4 city students preparing for government exam? A. Textbook.com, B. Topper.com, C. Step App, D. Beer Biceps. Send your answers to us by commenting on our Instagram post and following our page at Kiska_brand_Bachega.
In our panel today, our esteemed panelists will take us through this epic evolution of the concept of gaming.
Me and my wife, we're both crazy about Angry Birds, but she beats me hands down at Angry Birds. She also beats me hands down at Need for Speed.
That's because she can't beat you, na?